War, I think, was World War II, and you actually blew my mind with and well, let me just back up before we get into World War II. You mind fucked me, man. Like, and this hasn't happened in a while where a YouTuber just like mind fucks me and like shifts my consciousness. Like I had to lie down for a little bit, like after one of your videos. And believe it or not,
Don't go look at my bit shoot then, because it's way
is
way more
way
red pilly.
yeah, way more black pill. I'm going to check it out though. I haven't yet, but it was actually your performance essay on fatalism and video gaming, and I watched it and I was like, wow, that is so sad. Like, and I had to like sit
That's what
down
I
for like
saw though.
20
That's
minutes and just think about it. Yeah, do
I
you
have a
want to go
degree
in
in
about it a little
philosophy
bit?
too. I studied philosophy at William and Mary. That's history of philosophy is very interesting because you can see how uh, I don't think you can really understand history without philosophy or philosophy without history. You kind of need at least a B plus in each to understand what's going on, because culture and social factors and religion and so on uh, really influence philosophical ideas. But I was thinking more of something modern. On this, we have a whole generation that has grown up in the digital age. Like, wait, I started in the paper age, right? And I've been alive through the beginning of
Ryan, just
the
you don't
internet
have to
and so
tell us
on.
the exact number, but can you give us a ballpark of how, because you're really hard to guess your age because you look quite young.
40s.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So maybe I look 30s. I don't know.
I mean, you could pass for late 20s, man.
um, do we say gumsuri in Japanese? Like brown nose? maybe nowadays, because a lot of people do doing drugs and whatnot, they age a little faster. But
Hajimimashite.
Genki desu.
よろしく
It's
お願
good to
いし
meet
ま
you.
す。
You know a little bit of Japanese.
少しです。はい。元気
Wonderful. Mm, EA. I'm actually I'm a
Okay,
little bit
that's pretty
sick.
much all I know. But speaking of Japan, you live in mainland, right? Osaka?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
And
I do.
what, because you're obviously American, from the South, what made you move to Japan? Is it your hatred of the United States, Ryan?
No, I always joke George Bush got reelected, and I said, "F it, I'm out." But um, I just wanted to visit Japan for. I wanted, when I was in my 20s, before I got locked into a job, I thought I want to travel while I can, and Japan was on the list for a number of reasons. I mean, why not? But it has a lot of my interests overlap with Japanese things throughout different phases of my life. Uh, Even though it would change, whether it was martial arts or art or gaming or whatever, it was always Japanese. So I thought I would just come visit, and I really wasn't planning on moving, but I did because once you're here, it's hard to return. Um, it's really hard. The United States was at war, which I vehemently opposed, and in Afghanistan and Iraq, and then they reelected a warmonger. And even if they hadn't, the other choice was still a warmonger with John Kerry. It wouldn't have made a dime's worth of difference, and I don't want to pay for that. And once I had children, I really had to think about it too. I mean, in the U.S. schools, they're shooting people and they're doping them up on Adderall, and it's violent. Even if it's not like violent with guns and knives and so on, it's verbally violent. People are really abusive to each other. They don't even notice it, because it's just like fish don't know they're in the water. It's so pervasive that they don't see it unless you step out of it. And after being out of the United States and going back in, and I would just listen to conversations, even with friends, 6 people in rumors, and they're always putting each other down. Even if it's sarcasm, it's still like hostile the whole time. And then a lot of friends, they just are really catty and backstabby, especially the women. They would just dog each other. And I don't see that here. It's very different. And I never realized the level of stress and just hostility that people walk around with in the US. They're a little bit on edge all the time. People are paranoid of each other, right? There's bars on windows in certain schools in certain cities and things. The level of theft and violence is so high. You just like, oh, I can't go to that place at this time of night by myself. Why not? And that's just accepted as normal, but it's not normal. You should be able to go out anywhere, wherever, alone or not. You could here. You can't do that in a lot of American cities. Like they just know, especially as a woman or something, alone in Detroit at this alleyway, or whatever, you're just asking for something. That's not normal, right? That level of violence and fear, and that shouldn't exist, but it's pretty much unfixable at this point. But there are places in the world that, like Japan, maybe South Korea, there are spots where, yeah, it's perfectly fine to go wherever you want, whenever you want. And so for my kids, I'm looking at education, I'm looking at the cost of healthcare, I'm looking at all the disadvantages in the US. I don't want them to have to deal with that. So I stayed.
When you were talking about the differences in people and social interactions, Ryan, were you talking about young people specifically or Americans in general?
In general, but I think the youth is it's getting worse because they have this trade up culture. The what is it? Tinder, is that the
That's one of them.
one of the things?
I
Yeah,
don't use them, but
we didn't have that. Like I knew my neighbors and we'd play basketball and ride bikes and stuff, but you couldn't just. It's so easy to meet complete strangers now with Facebook and Tinder and whatever. That when as soon as somebody does one little thing that's annoying, or just ghost that person, get another one, they're totally replaceable. And there's no real conflict resolution. They're not learning how to cope with stress and deal with disagreements, and they are making echo chambers, and we call it purity spirals. And I see these little clicks going into purity spirals, and I'm thinking, man, it really creates an approval-seeking subculture where the lemmings will know what they're supposed to think and say, and they'll do it because they don't want to be socially ostracized.
yeah.
And more they're being pushed into a sort of virtual social life. I see kids spending hours and hours on Fortnite or first person shooter games or whatever. And I don't have a problem with video games or anything, TV, phones, whatever your thing is you like to do, as long as you're only doing it for entertainment or something. But I think it's both that and a bit of escapism. And what I was saying in the video that you saw was, I don't think the youth really see a clear connection between effort and reward. Like they could put enormous effort into a project in school or at a job or whatever, and it won't matter because it's all about who you know, nepotism, etc., to such a degree that why bother becomes the attitude. Whereas in a game, your output is based on your input. The more you play, the more you practice, the more items you get or whatever. Like in an RPG game, the more you advance, and there's a clear connection between work, hard work, or time you put in, and results, which is something very enjoyable and satisfying because they don't see that in the real world.
It's the best feeling, I think. And I've actually struggled with this belief in my past as well, which is I think one of the reasons why your essay that you performed affected me so much. Is it seems that one of the most, if not the most demoralizing thing is not seeing any reward for your effort, right? I mean,
Right.
that's what I think.
You're
Like,
thinking years too, like, oh, go to college. Like you're talking about investing a big chunk of your life, really. And it might not matter at all. And how motivated can you be into something that you're gonna really gamble here, spend a lot of money, spend a lot of your time, good time, of your youth pursuing something, and in the end, so what? Or worse, now you're in debt or something. And it used to be like for my parents' generation, like if you went to college, it was good as gold. Like you were getting a good job, and that just isn't the case now, and they know it. And it's not just because, oh, they majored in gender studies of hippos or whatever.
Right.
People will say that. I see a lot of people just dogging on the youth, and I see people making fun of boomers and stuff too, and it's a little tit for tat. But um, I feel like the young people, they've really got a bad lot, and this is why they're so bitter and lash out against other generations, whatever, because they're never going to own a house, right? They're never, unless you know the right people and everything. There'll be 30, mid 30s, maybe 40 before they can pay off a mortgage, and they'd need to basically either work for someone they knew. It has nothing to do with their own
Merit.
effort, right? It's nothing to do with their merit. Just like a minimal level, or you're not, can you read and all, things you could have left school in 7th grade and do what you end up doing anyway.
Yeah.
Right? You don't, what you specialize in really doesn't matter. You learn 90% of what you're going to do on the job in the first 2 weeks of the job. Like every job you're going to have, unless you're, except for some specialist things, even when you're a
Right.
lawyer, etc. That's the one you get. I'm like, not really. You do an apprenticeship and you follow them around at the firm or at the doctor's hospital, whatever, and you learn it on the job. You really learn a lot of the skills by doing them. And so this whole idea of liberal arts education has really failed the population.